It is a further implication of this view of reflective thought as consisting not of happenings in the head but of a matching of the states and processes of symbolic models against the states and processes of the wider world. That is, that it is stimulus deficit which initiates mental activity and stimulus discovery, which determinates it. The motorist running his finger over a road map is doing so because he lacks information about how to get there, how to get where he's going, and he will cease doing so when he has acquired that information. The engineer performs his experiments in the wind tunnel in order to find out how his model airplane behaves under various artificially produced aerodynamic conditions, and he will quite performing it if it and when he indeed finds out. A man searching for a coin in his pocket does so because he lacks a coin in hand, and he stops searching when he gets hold of one, or of course when he comes to the conclusion that the whole project is bootless because it happens that there is no coin in his pocket, or that it is uneconomical because the effort involved is such that the search costs more than it comes to. Motivational problems, which involve another sense of because, aside directive reasoning, begins in puzzlement and ends in either the abandonment of inquiry or the resolution of puzzlement. The function of reflective thought is to transform a situation in which there is experienced obscurity of some sort into a situation that is clear, coherent, settled, harmonious. In sum, human intellection, in the specific sense of directive reasoning, depends upon the manipulation of certain kinds of cultural resources in such a manner as to produce, discover, select environmental stimuli needed for whatever purpose by the organism. It is a search for information, and this search is the more pressing because of the high degree of generality of the information intrinsically available to the organism from genetic sources. The lower an animal, the less it needs to find out in detail from the environment prior to behavioral performance. Bears need to build wind tunnel to test aerodynamic principles before learning to fly. Those they already know. The uniqueness of man has often been expressed in terms of how much and how many different sorts of things he is capable of learning. Although monkeys, pigeons, and even octopuses may now and then disconcert us with the rather human things they prove capable of learning to do, in a general way this is true enough, but it is of perhaps even more fundamental theoretical importance to stress how much and how many things man has to learn. That fetalized, domesticated, and generally unhardy as he is, Man will be a physically unavailable animal independently of culture has often been pointed out. That he will be mentally unavailable as well has been rather less frequently noted. All this is no less true for the affective side of human thought than it is for the intellective. In a series of books and papers, Hebb has developed the intriguing theory that the human nervous system, and to a correspondingly lesser extent that of lower animals, demands a relatively continuous stream of optimally existing environmental stimuli as a precondition to competent performance. On the one hand, man's brain is not like a calculating machine operated by an electric motor, which can lie idle, without input, for indefinite periods. Instead, it must be kept warmed up and working by constantly varied input during the waking period at least. If it is to function effectively. On the other hand, given the tremendous intrinsic emotional susceptibility of man, such input cannot be intense, too varied, too disturbing, because then emotional collapse and a complete breakdown of the thought process ensue. Both boredom and hysteria are enemies of reason. Thus, as man is the most emotional as well as the most rational animal, a very careful cultural control of frightening, enraging, suggestive, etc. stimuli through taboos, homogenization of behavior, rapid rationalization, or strange stimuli in terms of familiar concepts, and so on, is necessary to prevent continual affective instability, a constant oscillation between the extremes of passion. But as a man cannot perform efficiently in the absence of a fairly high degree of reasonably persistent emotional activation, cultural mechanisms assuring the ready availability of the continually varying resort of sensory experience that can sustain such activities are equally essential. Institutionalized regulations against the open display of corpses outside of well-defined contexts, funerals, etc., protects a particularly high-strung animal against the fears aroused by death and bodily destruction. Watching or participating in automobile races, not all of which take place at tracks, this deliciously stimulates the same fears. Prize fighting arouses hostile feelings. A firmly institutionalized interpersonal affability moderates them. Erotic impulses and titillated by a series of devious artifices of which there is evidently no end, but they are kept from running riot by an insistence on the private performance of explicitly sexual activities. But contrary, so what this rather simplistic example suggests, the achievement of a workable, well-ordered, clearly articulated emotional life in man is not a simple matter of ingenious instrumental control, as kind of the clever hydraulic engineering of affect. Rather, it is a matter of giving a specific, explicit, determinate form to the general, diffuse, ongoing flow of bodily sensation, of imposing upon the continual shifts in sentience to which we are inherently subject, a recognizable mindful order, so what we may not only feel but know what we feel and act accordingly. It is mental activity that chiefly determines the way a person meets his surrounding world. Pure sensation, now pain, no pain, now pleasure, will have no unity and will change the respectivity of the body for future pains and pleasures only in rudimentary ways. It is sensation, remembered and anticipated, feared and sought, or even imagined as enshrined, that is important in human life. It is perception molded by imagination that gives us the outward world that we know. And it is the continuity of thought that systematizes our emotional reactions into attitudes with distinct feeling tones and sets a certain scope for the individual's passions. In other words, by virtue of our thought and imagination, we have not only feelings but a life of feeling. In this context, our mental task shifts from a gathering of information about the patterns of events in the external world per se towards a determining of the affective significance, the emotional import of that pattern of events. We are concerned not with solving problems but with clarifying feelings. Nevertheless, the existence of cultural resources, of an adequate system of public symbols, is just as essential to this sort of process as it is so to that of directive reasoning, and therefore the development, maintenance, and dissolution of moods, attitudes, sentiments, and so on, which are feelings in the sense of states or coordination, not sensation or motives, constitute no more a basically primitive activity in human beings that does directive thinking. The use of a road map enables us to make our way from San Francisco to New York with precision. The reading of Kafka's novels enable us to form a distinct and well-defined attitude toward modern bureaucracy. We acquire the ability to design flying planes in wind tunnels. We develop the capacity to feel through air in church. A child counts on his fingers before he counts in his head. He feels love on his skin before he feels in his heart. Not only ideas but emotions too are cultural artifacts in man. Given the lack of specificity of intrinsic affect in man, the attainment of an optimal flow of stimulation to his nervous system is a much more complicated operation than a prudent steering between the extremes of too much and too little. Rather, it involves a very delicate quantitative regulation of what comes in through the sensory apparatus, a matter where here again more of an active seeking for required stimuli than a mere watchful waiting for them. Neurologically, this regulation is achieved by afferent impulses from the central nervous system which modify receptor activity. Psychologically, the same process may be phrased in terms of the attitudinal control of perception. But the point is that in man, neither regnant fields or mental sets can be formed with sufficient precision in the absence of guidance from symbolic models of emotion. In order to make up our minds, we must know how we feel about things. And to know how we feel about things, we need the public images of sentiment that only ritual, myth, and art can provide. Four, the term mind refers to a certain set of dispositions of an organism. The ability to count is a mental characteristic, so is chronic cheerfulness, so also, though it has not been possible to discuss the problem of motivation here, is greed. The problem of the evolution of mind is therefore neither a false issue generated by a misconceived metaphysic, nor one of discovering at which point in the history of life an invisible anima was suppurated to organic material. It is a matter of tracing the development of certain sorts of abilities, capacities, tendencies, and propensities in organisms, and delineating the factors or types of factors upon which the existence of such characteristics depends. Recent research in anthropology suggests that the prevailing view that the mental dispositions of man are genetically prior to culture, and that his actual capacities represent the amplification or extension of these pre-existent dispositions by cultural means is incorrect. The apparent fact that the final stages of the biological evolution of man occurred after the initial stages of the ground of culture implies that basic, pure, or unconditioned human nature, in the sense of the innate constitution of man, is so functionally incomplete as to be unworkable. Tools, hunting, family organization, and later art, religion, and science molded men somatically, and they are therefore necessary not merely to his survival, but to his existential realization. The application of this revised view of human evolution leads to the hypothesis that cultural resources are ingredient, not accessory, to human thought. As one moves from lower to higher animals, phylogenetically, behavior is characterized by increasing active unpredictability with reference to present stimuli, a trend apparently supported physiologically by an increasing complexity and regnancy of certainly proceeding patterns of nervous activity, up to the level of the lower mammals. At least the major part of this group of autonomous central field can be announced for in terms of the development of novel neural mechanisms. But in the higher mammals, such novel mechanisms have as yet not been found. Although conceivably mere increase in numbers of neurons may in itself prove able fully to account for the fluorescence of mental capacity in man, the fact that the large human brain and human culture emerged synchronically not necessarily indicates that the most recent developments in the evolution of nervous structure consist in the appearance of mechanisms which both permit the maintenance of more complex regnant fields and make the full determination of these fields in terms of intrinsic innate parameters increasingly impossible. The human nervous system relies inescapably on the accessibility of public symbolic structures to build up its own autonomous ongoing patterns of activity. This in turn implies that human thinking is primarily an overt act conducted in terms of the objective materials of the common culture, and only secondarily a private matter, in the sense of both of directive reasoning and the formulation of sentiment, as well as the integration of this into motives. Man's mental processes indeed takes place at the scholar desk or the football field, in the studio or lorry driver's seat, on the platform, the chessboard, or the judge's bench. Isolationist claims for the closed system substantially of culture, social organization, individual behavior, or nervous physiology. To the contrary, notwithstanding process in the scientific analysis of the human mind demands a joint attack from virtually all of the behavioral sciences, in which the findings of each will force continual theoretical reassessments upon all of the others.